Okay, in this video we are going to be talking about just a few odds and ends, some additional tools available in Illustrator, and some advanced techniques for designing your illustrations. The first thing I want to do is talk a little more about strokes. We've been working with strokes quite a bit throughout this class, but we have not gotten into really what is possible with them. So far, all we've really been doing with the stroke is adjusting the color and the thickness of the stroke. There's quite a bit more that we can do. I've got a rectangle here with a black stroke. I'm going to go ahead and give it a bigger stroke just so that we can see what we're doing a little more. And then over here in my panels, I have the stroke panel. Now I've got several things that I can do here with the stroke panel. One, there's the weight, which is exactly the same as what I have up there in the control panel. The cap, which is not going to be for a shape and more for a line, so we'll come back to that in a second. Let's look at our corner first of all. I'm going to go ahead and just zoom in on a corner here. And you can see that my corner is set right now to be what is called a miter join. If I click this next one over, the round join, you see that it rounds my corners. And that would be all the corners on this shape. And my last one here is a bevel join, and that just kind of slices that corner off there. So, got a few options on the corners there. I've also got some options on how to align the stroke. By default, the stroke is going with the line in the center of it. So we've got an equal amount of going to the top and an equal amount going inward, right? Out and in. This right here is what's called a center to stroke. I can go to stroke to the inside, which is the next one over, and you'll see how it leaves the line right where it is, but it moves the whole stroke inside the line. And then I have stroke to the outside, which moves the whole stroke outside of the line. If you're ever doing strokes around text, this stroke to the outside works quite well because it keeps it from squeezing in on the text too much and making it more difficult to read. Now let's go ahead and draw a line so we can see what those caps look like. So here's a line, and you see that I'm on right now called a butt cap. If I go to a round cap, you'll see that it extends out past the end of my line in a dome there. Or I can go to what's called a projecting cap, which extends out past the point in a square. Normally, it is what's called a butt cap, and that just ends right at the point. So, a few options there as well. Now, another thing that I can do here is I can make a dashed line. Let's go ahead and just zoom in on this shape here. And I'm going to select it, and I'm going to select that I want a dashed line. Now, it's gone ahead and it's put my dashed line in there. You can see how if I deselect it, you can just see the dashes. But I've got some customization that I can do. By default, it's doing it so that the corners automatically get the dashes. Even they get a dash around the corner, even if it's not quite far enough for it to be, all the way to another dash. If I choose the other option here, it makes it so the dashes continue in the same distance all the way around and they're just going to go around the corners as they hit them. Down here, I can see that this is set to be a 12-point dash. So it's doing a 12-point dash and then a 12-point gap. Well, I can customize that. Maybe I want this to be a 12-point dash and then a 6-point gap. And maybe I want to go 12-point, 6-point, and then 6-point, and then 12-point. And you can see how I can create custom dash patterns by typing in exactly what I want the dash and the gap to look like. Underneath that, I have what are called arrowheads. Arrowheads work with lines. Let's go ahead and take this line here and just stretch it out. And you can see that I can say on the left side, I want it to have this arrow. And on the right side, maybe I want it to have this circle. So it automatically puts these kind of ornamentations on the ends there. Now I can decide the scale of those. So it's at 100% right now. Maybe I want that arrowhead to be quite a bit smaller. Let's go 25%, and same with the circle. So adjusting the scale with the line. I can decide how I want it aligned. Right now the tip of the arrow is at the point. Maybe I want it to be so that the back of the arrow is at the point, and same with going the middle of the circle there instead of the end of the circle. So those are my arrowheads. The last thing I have in here, it's called a profile. We actually have that same thing right up here. It's a variable width profile, meaning that it allows me to kind of make the width vary as it goes around. I've got several preset profiles here that I can use. You can also import your own. It just changes how the width goes around the stroke, makes it a little more interesting. Now, that's all well and good, but sometimes we want more control than that in the widths of our stroke. And that leads us to the next tool I want to talk about, which is the width tool. The width tool is right over here in the tools. Shift W is the keyboard shortcut for it. The width tool allows me to customize the width of a stroke at a particular point. So I'm going to click on that, and I can come here and just go at any point in my stroke and then click and drag out or in and make the width custom based upon what I choose in the width tool there. Now it makes these points where I've adjusted. I can go and click on that, and I can drag these to a different point, make minor adjustments in it that way. And that allows me to get a nice custom look to my stroke. Now let's look at that in a real world situation. I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm going to just draw a circle, well, an oval I should say. And now I'm going to go to my convert anchor point tool. I'm going to click that top one to make it a point. Go to the direct select tool to kind of drag that point out a little bit. Selection tool to rotate this. And then I'm just going to go to my pencil tool and just kind of give it a stem. So here I have a leaf, a very boring leaf at the moment. I want to make this more interesting and make it more realistic looking, like it was hand drawn. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to go to my width tool again. First of all, I'm going to make that stem wider down there and narrower up here. Next, I'm going to come and I'm going to make it nice and thick in the, whoops, didn't grab the wrong thing there, on the leaf itself at this point. And then come up to the top, and on this side of it, I'm going to make it go into a point. So now you can see that by doing that, I've been able to create a much more artistic looking leaf with a variable stroke that goes around the outside and looks more like it was drawn with a pen. So that is the width tool. The last thing I want to talk about with strokes isn't actually a real stroke at all. It is referred to as a pseudo stroke. Now the word pseudo means false. You may have heard the term in pseudonym, which means a fake name. It's a writing name that authors use. It's not their real name. So a pseudo stroke isn't actually a stroke. It is just there to look like a stroke, but you have certain controls that you wouldn't have with a real stroke. So the way you do a pseudo stroke, I'm going to go ahead and just draw a circle. And then I'm going to color this circle blue. And I'm going to make it have no stroke. Now, I'm going to just make a copy of that circle, an exact copy of it. And I want to send this copy to the back. So I'm going to go to Object and Arrange and send it to the back. And I'm going to make this copy black. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hold down Shift here. And I'm going to make that copy a little bit bigger than the original. And then I'm going to put it directly behind the original. And what you'll see is that it looks like a blue circle with a black stroke. That is a pseudo stroke. So why would I do that instead of a real stroke? Because with a pseudo stroke, I now have additional controls. Maybe I want that to come out like that. That to tuck down. Maybe I want this to be a little off on the curve. Bring it up and in a little bit. Let's also throw this one off on the curve with the other direction. So by distorting that stroke, I can give it more of a hand-drawn look. This is the sort of thing you'd see in like comic book illustration and things like that. They do this quite often, the pseudo stroke technique. In addition to a hand-drawn look, sometimes it can give you more of a three-dimensional look. So if I were to go to the pen tool, and let's just draw sort of a random shape here. And let's turn this shape blue. And then do the same thing. I'm going to copy off a portion of it. And I'll just leave that one in the back and turn it black. And you'll see that by taking this and maybe making it a little bit bigger again, I can adjust it in a way to where the stroke is showing in certain places of it and not in other places, giving it more of a three-dimensional look. So that again is a pseudo stroke and is a very handy tool when working, wanting to get more of a hand done or comic booky look to it.